Hey, we're your hosts.
I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Jonathan.
And we believe that one of the most valuable gifts you can give to yourself is the gift of wholeness through integrating all aspects of what it means to be human.
And in this podcast, we're bringing you insight, information, and inspiration to move from a stressful to stress-free life.
Your journey to becoming even healthier and happier starts right now.
Welcome to Wellness Theory, the podcast.
Today I'm joined by Gemma McFall, who is a stress, anxiety and chronic pain coach. After her own journey with chronic pain spanning a decade, she now helps others to recover from chronic pain using her 4-step freedom from pain process. She is a highly decorated coach and is the only SIRPA-trained chronic pain practitioner here in the Middle East. And on top of that as well, she is a busy mum of 2 who lives with her family here in Dubai, loves to be active with swimming, cycling and running, and practices what she preaches. So I'm really excited for today's conversation. So welcome to the show, Gemma. It's so nice to see you.
Yes, good to see you too. Thank you for having me, Charlotte.
I think this conversation is going to be an absolute gem for our listeners because we're going to be diving into a very, very important topic when it comes to stress that I don't think is spoken about enough. And I'm very mindful that I might have said that on pretty much every podcast episode we've ever recorded, that it's not spoken about enough. But this, I really, really feel it in my bones. Jonathan, my partner in Wellness Theory and in life, has shared his story of chronic pain many times and how it was very closely linked to a lot of compounded stress and unresolved emotion. So this isn't something new that our listeners are hearing about, but Gemma, you have had your own personal experience with chronic pain. It's now something you specialize in. So I'm super excited to dive into this topic. So do you want to just share with our listeners a little bit about you and what's led you to what you do today?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I can feel it in my bones too. I think you're right. It's going to be one of those topics. So I was a HR director in a previous career, and throughout the career I had back pain, but it was kind of niggly, not too, I see a physio and then I'd have tablets, and gradually, I kept thinking it's going to go away, and then it never went away. And it's only really when I look back over I think it was about 8 years, I can see how slowly it progressed into really, really bad back pain. So it got to the point where I was having injections in my spine to relax the muscle, not the muscles, I was getting nerve spasms all the time. Couldn't sit in an office chair. I'd got rid of all my flat shoes. It was bad. And at the time we were living in Dubai. And then we moved to Sri Lanka with my partner's job. And almost from the minute we landed in Sri Lanka, I would say the pain was already at, 8, 9. It escalated to 15 out of 10. It was so bad. And I had to lie on the floor all the time because it felt like I needed to relax my spine. It's the only place that I felt like I could have a bit of relief. And at the time I had a 6-month-old and a 1-year-old. And I can vividly remember them kind of crawling around me, and that's how I would sort of have to play with them. I wasn't able to lift them into high chairs. Somebody could lift them onto me, but yeah, that wasn't an option. And so I was desperate, and I tried to book surgery, and I found a surgeon who was willing to operate on me, who had never met me. And I emailed him an MRI scan, and he was like, yeah, no problem, you fly into Singapore, we'll do the operation, 2 days later you can fly back. And thank goodness my insurance company blocked it, because this guy was pretty famous for doing very quick surgeries without really understanding the big picture.
When you said that, my stomach just flipped. I was like, oh my gosh, that is insane that a doctor would do that without having any kind of actual consultation with you. That is insane. Okay, I'm very, very happy your insurance blocked that.
Yeah, right. And so I was with Cigna at the time, and Cigna had this third opinion thing where if you're not sure, or if they're not sure that you should be having a particular route of treatment, they go out to 3 specialists in 3 different countries, and they say, okay, based on the case history, what do you think that this patient should do? And I got 3 completely different write-ups, One said I needed a microdiscectomy. One said I needed some other thing. I can't remember the name of it now. And then the other one was like, oh, I think she should just carry on with physio for a while. So once I was faced with these three things, like I was just so desperate. And now I was even more confused because even the professionals didn't know what I should be doing. And, you know, it was affecting sleep. It was affecting absolutely everything. And then just by pure miracle, I was retraining to be a coach because I knew after leaving the job of HR, I knew I needed to have something to anchor onto. And I was just on a coaching call, learning to be a coach. And I was the client, and the girl was that was trying to coach me. I think she had 15, 20 minutes to coach me. She went, what do you want to be coached on? I said, I want someone to cut my back off. Can't live like this anymore. I've just had enough. And this poor girl had 20 minutes to try and figure out what to do.
How did that go?
Obviously, it didn't go that well. It didn't go that well. But just by pure chance, the teacher on the call, afterwards, he said, you got to read this book. And then he suggested a book on the mind-body approach to healing. And I wouldn't have even entertained the idea of a book had I not been absolutely desperate. So I downloaded the book immediately and started reading it. And within the first maybe chapter or two, I was sold on it. I knew 100% I'd been on the wrong path for years and years and years. And I knew if I followed the mind-body approach to healing and understood the science behind pain, that I would be able to get out of it. And I did. So I used all of my coaching, things that I'd learned in coaching, worked through that, understood the science. And actually, I remember thinking at the time, I'm going to track what I do, how I do it, because one day this can help somebody else. And then I had my first pain-free day after about 3 months, which was, I feel like that was quick, considering how long I'd been in pain for. But I immediately noticed results, but just it took me a while to have a whole entire day with no pain. And then by the end of the coaching course, I was naturally attracting people with chronic pain. And that's when I just went, you know what, I need to specialize in this because the world needs to know. And there's just too many people with suffering for no reason.
It is such a common story, the suffering part. Unfortunately, the healing part isn't as common just yet, particularly around back and neck pain. It's absolutely incredible the amount of clients that come to us with that, just people that we meet and we speak to, like that is where it's showing up. But then there's almost like you experienced a disconnect to realize that actually it might not just be a physical thing, and there's perhaps something deeper going on. So I'd love for you to perhaps share with us, like, what is that mind-body connection?
Yeah, I just want to add on to that, what you said about back pain and neck pain. The other one I see a lot is migraines, where people have just come to accept, oh, I have migraines every month, you know, maybe once a month, once every other week, as if it's normal and as if they need to continue with that. And I'm so passionate about this. I just want people to know. So in answer to your question, what was your question? What is the mind-body connection? Okay, so in very basic terms, it is when all pain is created in the brain, and it is when the pain signal is misfiring. Basically, it's getting a signal from your body that there should be danger, and then it's firing this signal, which is causing pain, which then causes more fear of the pain, which then causes more signals of fear, which causes more pain. And then you're very quickly in the pain-fear cycle. Another way to sort of explain how and why it comes about, when we learn to ride a bike, we never forget, because it's like a neural pathway. We've established a neural pathway that says, when I get on a bike, I need to do this, and there's all these signals firing. But if you didn't ride a bike for months and months, you would still be able to get on that bike and ride it easily because the neural pathways are there. Yeah. The same is true with pain. So at one point, I did have back pain because I twisted it. I remember that my spine going click and I was in agony. I had an ice pack on it. I can remember the day it happened. But so the neural pathway for pain was established. coincidentally, it was 2 weeks before I became an expat living in Dubai, which is no coincidence at all. Now I can see how pain works. But I moved to Dubai with a little niggle in my back, and then the neural pathway just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And one of the reasons is because my nervous system was on high alert. I was, you're familiar obviously with fight or flight. Our body goes into fight or flight when we think there's danger. Well, in this case, there really genuinely was danger. I was leaving my family in the UK. I was moving to Dubai, starting a new job, everything was different. So I was in fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight, your body cannot heal itself because you're ready for action, you're ready for a fight. So your autoimmune system's down, nothing is working. So therefore, the pain fear cycle just continued and continued until the point when it was just normal. And certain activities would lead to pain every single time, like getting plates out of a dishwasher, for example, could not do that at all.
Wow. And so it's not only the initial injury, it's then the relationship that we build that just keeps on making it chronic, right? It makes it repetitive, it makes it stick. It's funny you mentioned migraines. So that was something that I used to experience a lot of. I create this expectation in my mind when I get to my menstrual phase, and if I'm highly stressed or something's happening, then I'm gonna lose a couple of days a month. And that then became an expectation, right? That neural pathway was like almost like that was becoming a norm, and it was like, whoa, no way is that going to be my norm? Like when I become aware of it, it's like, okay, how do I navigate this? What's going on? I started to understand what migraines really were, and the ways to solve them is not necessarily just painkillers. The most effective solution I found for migraines has been meditation or hypnosis. And that was an absolute game changer for me in the early days when I was learning about this mind-body connection, because I was always taught, you're in pain, take a painkiller. Right?
Yeah.
That's it, job done. And then you just keep doing that forever when you get pain. But it's like, at what point do we stop trying to have these quick fixes when it continues? It's different if it's a one-off and we experience these things, or there is like some emergency and an accident that happens, but we cannot ignore the psychological and the emotional elements to these experiences.
Yeah, and just jumping on to what you said about the painkiller thing, you said painkiller is not the only way to solve a migraine. I would argue 100% that a painkiller does not solve a migraine at all. It hides the migraine. There's a big difference between recovering completely from a migraine and just masking the symptoms. And if we mask the symptoms of a migraine, or we mask the symptoms of, I used to mask the symptoms all the time of my back pain. I had this gel thing. I put this gel on my back and I took tablets at the same time, and I was masking it. But what then happens is some other thing will pop up for you, not necessarily a migraine, but maybe skin rash or allergies or something else. And so chronic pain just keeps on trying to pop out in different places. And that is why people who tend to have chronic pain, they either have many different episodes over a lifetime. So if they look back and they think, oh, well, as a child, actually, I had this, and as a teenager, I had that, and then I had that, this and that. Why is it always me that has these things? Well, because your nervous system has been always in fight or flight, Or the other thing is, people with chronic pain tend to have many symptoms all at once. And the same thing, we're just covering it up, and then we call it fibromyalgia.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, as a society, I think we've just got so used to masking everything. Everything is through a filter, through a lens. Let's numb it. Let's go for the instant gratification over the long-term solution. And so I'm a true believer of getting to the root cause of issues so that we can create lasting change. That's been kind of our motto since we started the wellness theory back in the day. And it's something we live by today. And to go back to what you mentioned earlier about your pain-free day that you experienced. I remember when Jonathan finally was free from his pain, I remember him coming in to the kitchen. He was like, Charlotte, you're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. He goes, I can stand up, like I'm good. There's no pain. And he was like, he didn't know what to do with himself. He was like beside himself. When you see a kid like so happy and excited when they've experienced something for the very first time, like it just, it was incredible to witness that for him. So to imagine how that would have felt after, like you, over a decade of blurry vision and neck pain and back pain and just trying every physical fix he could find, to suddenly be free from it. That was just something that was unbeknownst to him. So like he's very much like on your page when it comes to tell the world everything, tell the world, because it's absolutely necessary. And like you, he had a quick turnaround with it. So for anybody listening to this that perhaps is wishing for one of those pain-free days and to then have that pain-free life for it to continue, like where does somebody really begin?
Really good question. So you begin with the science. So if I can tell you a story about a client that I worked with recently, she had ankle pain and she actually had surgery. Actually, this wasn't even a session. This was just like a discovery call of like, should she go down the mind-body route? She had a surgery booked in for the following week for her ankle. And she wanted just to see, should I really go through with this surgery? We sat and had a coffee. I explained to her about the science behind pain, a little bit like we've done on the call today. I explained a little bit more in detail. And then she called me and she's like, I've been doing what you've said and the pain's gone. I've cancelled the surgery. And I was like, that's fast. That's a book cure. We call that a book cure. So for anyone listening, the first, very most important thing is understand the science behind pain. You have to understand that pain is trying to tell you something. And we've got to figure out what is it that it's trying to tell us, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's like, it'll be trying to tell you something. Like, for example, I had a client once that had migraines whenever she went for meals with like a lot of people on the table. And what the migraine was trying to tell her is she hates going for meals with a lot of people.
So
it's as simple as that.
The body was always trying to tell you something. It's interesting you mentioned ankle as well. So when I must have been maybe 13 or 14, when I was at school, I was playing basketball and it was in like a sports center. So the basketball court was like really close to the wall. So like by the net is basically the wall. So I'm like running, like trying to do this layup, looking all cool or whatever. And my ankle just turned and flipped like under me basically. And as far as I'm concerned, I was 14 years old. I hurt my ankle playing sport. End of. Later, the pain continued and it would flare up from time to time. And I'd be like, why is that flaring up? I mean, years later, like decades later. And I was just confused because I was like, I'd been training, like I'd strengthened everything again. There was nothing broken, like, and I really was confused. And when we worked it back and tracked it back to the chapter in my life that happened, it was around the same time as when my parents got divorced, and there was a lot of fear around that time. So what was actually happening is that when it would flare up, it was when I was feeling intense fear. That was the way my body was trying to communicate my emotion to me. Because one of the reasons being, I think, because I was ignoring the emotions or not emotionally aware enough to understand what was going on day to day at that point. But to be able to link it back and then do the emotional release work that was attached to that ankle injury and to that time of my life, never had it since. Never.
Yeah. Can believe it, 100%. And I call this timelining. So whenever a client comes to me, one of the first things we do is a timeline from when they were born, literally the day they were born, what was going on in your life on the day you were born. For example, if you were separated from your parents at a very, very young age, that's separation anxiety, and then the baby gets some kind of medical symptom. Oh, no surprise, because it's the nervous system, even if the baby is dysregulated. But it's interesting because we go through this timeline in exercise and it seems so comprehensive when, oftentimes a client will do it without me there and then we'll go through it together. And as we're chatting, other stuff will come up and I'm like, why isn't that on the timeline? Like, for example, a traumatic birth of their child. Even a traumatic birth of their child may have lasted for a couple of hours and then everything was fine, but it still happened. There was still trauma there, but it's not showing on this timeline anywhere. And oftentimes the reason is because we conveniently have selective memory when it comes to trauma because we don't really want to remember it. So it's interesting. And then obviously when that comes up and then you look at the physical thing that's happening at that time, there's always something.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, we use timeline paradigm techniques with our clients when it comes to emotional release work, and being able to kind of access some of those memories that the subconscious might be, keeping at bay for protection, right? So it's very natural that we would do that. And it's important for people to know that you don't have to go digging around to find everything in the past. But if your mind or body or your heart is telling you that there's something going on, there's some disruption in the system, then it's absolutely essential to shine a spotlight on it. Otherwise, the suffering will continue. So, Gemma, with what you've already shared, which is loads, where does somebody apply the science to their situation? So you said, like, the example of the lady that cancelled her surgery, which is amazing, and she just started to understand the science of it and started to do the things that you told her. What was the things that you told her to do that perhaps helped her to apply that science?
So keep an evidence log. So when you feel the twinge in your back or the migraine comes on, what's going on in that exact moment, or what's going to be happening the next day, or what happened the day before. And always think emotionally and try to see the connections between, oh, you know what, the back pain only happens on the way to work. It never happens on the way home from work, or vice versa. I've had clients who are fine at work, but as they're driving home, their car seat is hurting. But on the way to work, the car seat wasn't hurting them, you know. So starting an evidence log to see the connection between when things are not okay emotionally, and then therefore the symptoms follow. So that's one thing, the evidence log. With this particular woman, I can't remember, she said something about going up and down steps. It hurt when she went up and down steps. And I said, well, instead of thinking about your left ankle as you go down the steps, why don't you think about your right shoulder? You know, as a silly little thing. And I said, just see what happens. Look up to the sky and think about your shoulder. And she did that, and that was enough to break that neural pathway. Because over and over again, when we focus on the pain, it just strengthens it. So we go to bend down for something, and we bend in a way as if we're broken because it hurts so much, you know. So it's about trusting that the science is absolutely solid, which it is, and trusting that your body, you know, the signal's coming for a reason that's emotional, not physical. So you can bend down and do your shoe up. Yes, it will probably hurt, but don't be scared of it, which is easier said than done. I realize that for anyone that's listening that's in agony. I've been there. Can I share something I did at the very, very beginning of my kind of journey? So I realized, I have no idea how I stumbled upon this, but I realized if I lay down flat on the floor, my back would feel great. But also, if I lay there I used to listen to these tracks on YouTube, like relaxing music tracks. I would lie and listen to this music, and around 7 or 8 minutes, I would have these massive muscle spasms go through my whole body. And I would it's hard to explain what would happen, but my whole body would be in absolute agony. But then when I understood the science, what I started to do is lie down, relax to the music, and I would wait for these spasms to come. And then I'd be like, oh, there it is. And I'd just breathe through it, and I would allow it to be there, and it would be fine. And I did this over and over again to prove to my body that it was fine. The same thing used to happen at the end of yoga classes. I somehow managed to get through the yoga class, and then in the shavasana at the end, I'd be in agony. But the minute I told the instructor to ignore me if I didn't sit up when the rest of the class sat up, it didn't happen again.
Interesting.
There's
a lot to be said for the power of observation when it comes to just everything, to be honest. Where we're talking about day-to-day life, where we're talking about something physical, something emotional, but when we don't buy into the thing and really beeline for it and focus on it, it takes away some of the power, right? And we don't get sucked into it and push more energy towards it. When we actually observe, and we can take a step back, like you did, just listening to the music, almost just wait for it to come and breathe through it. You're focusing then on your breathing, you're not focusing on the spasms or on the pain. And when we can do that, we start to create space between our experience and what it could be. And as soon as we do that, the body now has space to do what it actually needs to do. Because when we are so like tense and focused on that painful thing, as much as we shouldn't like ignore it, we want to see it for what it is. Otherwise, again, it's just wasted energy, and we contract, right? The body contracts when it's under that stress. And when our body's contracted, all that does is create more tension, more apprehension inside the body, which then stops blood flow, or as much blood flow as it can to that area for it to actually carry the goods that need it to actually heal in the first place.
Yeah, yes. It's fascinating. A really great thing for people who are new for this is somatic tracking. So this is something you can do. Well, you can sort of do it yourself. There's Insight Timer has a few tracks on this, but it's easier with a facilitator. So what somatic tracking is basically, I have a client on the call who's got, for example, migraine. And then I will ask them, invite them to close their eyes, explain to me, where do they feel the migraine? What does it feel like? And they'll say, oh, it's behind my eyes. It's hard. It's this, it's that. And I'll really get them to describe it in great detail. What color is it? How hot is it? And what's happening in this is what we resist persists. So I'm encouraging them to lean into it. And then when you lean into it, you're proving to yourself that it's not scary. We can observe this migraine as it is.
Yeah.
And then what happens as we go through somatic tracking, the symptoms start moving around. So I'm like, has it changed in any way? Oh, it has actually. Now it's only down one side. Oh, really? Well, what does it feel like now? And they'll describe it. And then again, it moves. And oftentimes it vanishes completely. Like, that's evidence in itself that the migraine was already created by the nervous system and everything. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. It's like, imagine you had a lump of ice and you observe it for long enough outside of the freezer, right? Like,
yes.
you're going to watch it disperse. You're going to watch it suddenly disappear. Yes, it's going to become water, but then at some point it's going to dry and it's going to disappear completely. And essentially that's what happens to these like pain spots, right, inside of us.
Yeah, it's incredible. I love this topic. I hope you've allowed 6 hours.
I can feel it. So Gemma, talk to us about the link between stress and chronic pain, because oftentimes it's not obvious that those two things are connected. And it's like suddenly we wake up and we've got chronic pain and we realize that it's chronic pain. And actually there's been lots of little signals probably leading up to that. Could you shed some light on that?
Yes, because this is one of my most interesting points about this whole thing. Because if you'd have asked me when I had back pain, when I was HR director, are you stressed? Like, if you'd said, are you stressed? I would say, no, not at all. Not in any way, shape or form am I stressed. Was I missing deadlines? Never, ever. Did I go to all the networking events? Yes. Was I there for my kids? Yes. Did I have the maximum 45 days off maternity leave? Yes. And then I was straight back to work on, day 46. But like, as a human, I didn't feel stressed at all. But I had back pain. And the reason is it is easier to feel physical pain in many occasions than it is to feel emotional pain. And the other thing is, for many people who have chronic pain, they've grown up from a young age with what we call a dysregulated nervous system. So maybe as a child, they were in fight or flight. And then they became a teenager, which was all right. Maybe there was no symptoms, became an adult, still no symptoms, but then suddenly something changes. We have kids, we get married, we move countries, COVID, something pushed the person over the edge, which then causes the chronic pain. So it's not always obvious, and that's why I find it quite interesting, this topic, because oftentimes people are put off because they're like, no, I'm not stressed, so therefore it can't be my body thing. But it absolutely can be. I know that because I was that person. But for people that are showing outward signs of stress, maybe they're feeling anxiety, so tight chest, a really busy mind, insomnia, not being able to sleep at night is probably one of the first signals. But really, I would say insomnia, anxiety symptoms, and chronic pain, they are all the same thing. It is all your body saying, whoa, something's not right here, you need to make a change.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because stress, it's almost been defined more and more over the years as workload related, whether that's personal workload or actual career workload. Like, it's almost like if you're being able to deliver and your capacity and you're managing to show up, even if you're squeezing every last bit of juice out of yourself, like, as long as you're still delivering, then you're not stressed. And it's actually nothing to do with your workload, really, right? Whether that's personal commitments or work commitments. We always talk about stress being like this multi-dimensional experience, right? It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's physical, and it's all of those things, not just in silo, which is why, like, prevention obviously is like one of the things that we care about massively, because I think that's gonna hopefully help in terms of educating the next generations that come up, so that these stress related diseases start to reduce as much as possible. I don't mean just us at Wellness Theory, I mean everybody that's flying the flag for stress relief in one way, shape or form. And it's taking that time to observe yourself, to actually understand what is going on, because stress for you might look very different from stress to me. You know, stress can be overthinking, negative thinking, intrusive thoughts. Stress can be closing when all you want to do is open and you want to speak and you can't speak. You know, it's related to your confidence, it's related to your identity, it's related to, yes, how much load you're putting on your body, but it's also related to your past experiences and to what you're putting into your system. There's so many facets to this, which can be really overwhelming. I think for anyone even listening to me just ranting on there, you know, it can sound like a lot, but the moment we take a moment to pause and just check in with ourselves, that's the moment you find what your thing is, and you can find, okay, what is your definition of what you're experiencing now? Call it stress, call it anxiety, call it pain, call it sensation, call it an emotion, call it whatever you want. Just notice it. Like, give yourself that gift to actually sit with yourself and get to know what's happening in this moment, because very often as well, you know, we're still reacting to something that happened a long time ago. It's nothing to do with what's happening day to day, which just boggles my mind every single time. It was, again, like you, this is what fascinates me about this topic, because it's just so vast, but yet so unique for everyone. And when you really get into it, it's a relatively, for want of a better term, easy or simple solution. But first, the first step is recognizing and then having that awareness and doing something with it.
Yeah, I love the way that you explain that. Yeah, it's education, it's understanding that this is a thing, it's a signal, it's an alarm, it's, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's in your body. And I realized something as you were talking. One of the model I take people through is, it's like 4 P's. The first thing is pain and understanding what pain is from a scientific point of view. The next one is past, which we've already talked about, the timelining and looking at the past. And not everybody needs to go and like hash up that entire past. Absolutely not. It's just recognizing it, and maybe there's certain things within that they need to do to process the emotion. And it can be so fast. I can take someone, or you take some of your processes and all different processes to feel that feeling again. And once you've felt it again, we can let it go. And then forgiveness is another big part of past. Who do you need to forgive? What are you holding on to? Why are you holding on to that lack of forgiveness? So that's the second P is past. And then the third P is personality. And so what you said, stress is different for different people. I work through people's personality with them using Gallup Strengths personality tool. And so something that gives me energy is talking, as you probably guessed, helping people to kickstart, thinking about the future, learning things. This is me, and that's my strengths. But if I've got a client, for example, who is really analytical, loves thinking, likes being alone, but they're in a workplace that's the opposite, and they've got open plan desk, they're shoved in the middle, they've got to talk to everyone, they're forced to do presentations. There's a huge disconnect between who they are as a person, personality-wise, and how they're having to spend their day. So once we figure out who we are and what gives us energy, we can then create our weekdays and weekends and evenings and everything to be in alignment with who we are and who we are not. Because that's the other thing. Stress comes when we think we should be a certain way. So I find that this particular part's crucial. And then the last P is practical tools that you can do in the moment as you feel yourself. And that's the work-related thing.
Amazing. Let's pause on those practical tools for a moment, and we'll definitely get there. But just going back to that personality piece, because that is gold for anyone listening. Like, we bang on about this all the time, how being authentic, knowing who you are, living in alignment is what I truly believe gives us vitality. I truly believe that's what we'll be thinking about, you know, in our last moments, is how did we live, you know, and who were we? What was the impact that we've had? And I think sometimes we're so disconnected from that causes not only disconnect from how we feel about ourselves, like almost like mentally, and the narrative we have for ourselves, but our nervous system actually has a reaction to that. And I think that gets overlooked massively, thinking that, okay, well, no, that's not a physical thing, so it doesn't affect me. But no, actually, your whole nervous system, you know, your hormonal system, everything is reacting to that narrative, to that story, to that stimulus that is in alignment or out of alignment with us. And it's something that's not talked about enough. So, Gemma, for anyone listening that is perhaps hearing us speak and like, why are these two so like passionate about this P and this topic, like, why is it so crucial to the work that you do that it is a standalone P, that it is its own pillar in your process?
Yeah. Because it was a game changer for me personally. And so I've had so much evidence. I mean, as you were talking, I was just thinking why. I kind of was predicting you were going to ask me that question. I was thinking, when I was a HR director, I was firing on all cylinders and using most of my strengths. When I suddenly didn't have a job and I was in Sri Lanka, for example, I have a strength called achiever, which means if any given day goes by and I feel like I've not achieved something, whatever the measure of achieve is, then I feel miserable. You know, I have discipline, which means I like putting systems and processes in place and organizing things. Same thing. I feel miserable if I don't get to do that. Communication, I have to be with people. Learner, I get energy from learning. So what happened is I moved to Sri Lanka, and overnight I'd gone from using my strengths to effectively being who I am to not being who I am. I was by myself with the two kids. My husband went off to work. I was insanely jealous because he got to go to work. How do you fill 8 or 9 hours with 2 small kids in a country where you've got no friends? Yeah. You know, no friends because I just arrived, you know. And so I realized very quickly, because I was already a Gallup Strengths coach. And so I figured this out. This was the first thing I did before looking at the past. And I thought, right, I'm going to wake up today. How can I use Learner? And I started watching TED Talks every single day. Every single day I watched one. Discipline, I started organizing the house just for the sake of knowing that it would tick off that box. Achiever, even though I had back pain, I got a voluntary job at my son's school, and I started going in. It was just a preschool. I started going in with him in the morning until about 12 o'clock. And all I had to do was walk around and supervise the teachers and just make sure they were okay and talk to the parents. So I got to use communication. I felt like I was achieving something. It was amazing. And then I realized I had no pain from 8 o'clock until 12 o'clock. And then I would get home and I would have pain in the afternoon. And it's like, you cannot get more obvious than that. I'm using my strengths, no pain. Afternoon, not using my strengths, pain. So then I started creating my afternoons also to play to my strengths. So that's why, for me, it is such a standalone P. And also having it as a standalone thing means I can lift it out and do it with teams or families or couples. Because when you always marry you always tend to be attracted to your opposite person. And so that in itself is a real trigger. If you know what I mean, like you fall in love with someone because, oh, you're so this, that, and the other, and it's the opposite to who you are. And the honeymoon phase is wonderful, but then after the honeymoon phase is done, then you try to change that person to be more like you. because you're always the right way. And then the arguments start, the resentment, whatever, and the chronic pain follows.
It fascinates me. Like that example you gave is brilliant, because it's you then start actively creating your life by design. And I believe when you do that, you have full autonomy over your life. But even though some people obviously are working for other people, and you know there are certain things that are outside of our control, we can still design the core elements that underpin it. And I think sometimes we give up our power to be able to do that, and we think that we can't, but actually we can at any point look at where we can add those strengths in. One of the things that we talk about, probably a bit more than strengths, obviously I know you've got that Gallup background, we which I absolutely love, and anybody who's curious about their strengths, reach out to Gemma. She'll be able to help you out with that and help you to identify, you know, where your biggest strengths lie. We talk a lot about values. What's the difference in your eyes between our core values as a human being, because I believe that that holds massive like value in the alignment piece of personal growth, and strengths. What's the difference to you? So
strengths are innate talents that you're born with, and as you go through life they will stay the same pretty much. So if you do the Gallup strengths assessment today, and then you look at your strengths and think, okay, I can remember when I was 8, I also used to be X, Y, and Z. You know, like strengths very rarely change. They get better with awareness. You can figure out who you are and you can channel everything in. It's great for high achievers or people that really want to push themselves, because we can be more of ourselves. So that's strengths. Values, I believe, and maybe you believe something else, so please jump in.
Tell us.
I believe that values are the compass of the direction that you want to go. It's like a North Star. So when you're confused, you're not sure what to do, and you need to make a decision, you can look up to that North Star and go, that's the direction I need to go in, and just keep realigning yourself. But I think that values change over a lifetime. So for example, I never had health as a value. Never. I was sporty. I've always been sporty. I always ate pretty healthily, but I would never have valued health at all because I took it for granted. Now, health is my #1 value, and it helps me make decisions of what type of holiday to have, what to eat, what type of friends to have. Health is what type of career to have, you know? So I do think that values need recalibrating every few years to make sure it really is the direction that you want to be going in. And I feel like when a client has clear values, they are on a path to recovery a lot faster than someone that doesn't know where they're going or why they're going.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that's the path, you know. And I think when you combine strengths and values, it's a superpower. When it comes to values, I absolutely agree that I think as we evolve, so do our values, and they will start to take different form. And I believe we hold values in every context of our life. So we hold values for work, we hold values for our health, we hold values for everything else. So work or health, for example, it isn't a value, it's a priority for you, I would say, but there's something about health that you value. So I'm curious, while we're here, Gemma, like you said health is like up there for you. Why? Like, what is important to you about being healthy? What does
family
allow for you?
Family. It links back to family and community, and like I need to be healthy so that I'm not a snappy mum. Okay. And so that I have that community thing with my family. And I don't know, I guess if you tie it all the way back, it would, I don't know, that's a deep question. But somehow I feel like it links back to family.
Nice. It's really worth reflecting on, because those top 5 values behind why health is so important to you are going to be responsible for 95% of your self-initiated motivation when it comes to actually then going to do the healthy activities. And you've clearly got a handle on them, even if it's not conscious, like, because otherwise you wouldn't be where you are today and doing what you're doing today. But I think sometimes we have to look behind that surface layer when it comes to what we value, because again, a bit like we said earlier, stress is almost this blanket statement also, I think our values have become this like blanket statement to some extent, and therefore we don't leverage them as much. It's like, okay, well, I know, you know, my career is important to me. I know that, you know, my family is important to me. It's like, okay, but what else? Like, let's go layer deeper. Let's go a layer deeper, go a layer deeper. And I'm sure what you've found as well with the work that you do with clients, like you never sort of let them get away with giving you the first answer.
Yeah, of course.
Something else behind the curtain that's really driving that answer. And the reason I'm sharing this is because when we're talking about something like chronic pain, is deep rooted in our system, in our body, in our mind, in our heart, in our soul. And if we don't continue digging, I think it can be a detriment, right, to the future and to those pain-free days and life that can be experienced.
Yeah, 100%. There is something I want to say before I forget. When it comes to chronic pain, I just want to sort of say that chronic pain is when you've experienced symptoms over 3 months or more. Less than that, and it's most likely your body's just still healing, and we need to just let your body just naturally recover, you know. And there's a big difference. You know, you break your arm, you can't fix that using the mind body. You need to see a doctor and get it joined back together. If that broken arm's still hurting you in 6 months, then it's chronic pain. And it's also chronic pain if it comes and goes. So like, oh, in January I suffered from migraines, but then they stopped, but then they came back in July, and then they came back at Christmas. That's chronic pain because it's been ongoing. It's something that keeps happening. But it is really, really, really important as you start out on this kind of journey to definitely seek medical sign off, if you like. And the question is this condition life-threatening? And if it's not life-threatening, you have nothing to lose from going for the mind-body approach.
Yeah.
But what we cannot be doing is having a foot in the medical world and a foot in the mind-body world. If you're still seeing a physio that's telling you to be careful and lift things very delicately because you might break in half, you know, and then you've got a mind-body coach working with you that's telling you that your body's strong, your brain's going to get completely confused. But it is really important to get that medical sign-off, because I'm not a doctor, obviously, just for, I think, for peace of mind, because then once your mind can go, okay, it's not life-threatening, okay, now I'm going to throw myself into that.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on somebody that might have got kind of the okay from the doctor to say, okay, it's not life-threatening, but here's some medication that you need to take for the rest of your life, right? Because that's very common. How does that work when it comes to a mind-body approach? Can somebody continue taking whatever they've been prescribed whilst they're diving into mind-body?
If I met a client that already was taking medication, I wouldn't ask them to come off it.
Yep.
I would start the work with them with the long-term goal of getting off it, or even the shorter-term goal of getting off it, to be honest. But they need to come off it at the right time, you know. If I met a client at the point where the doctor said, you need this medication, and they hadn't yet started taking it, I would say give it unless it's life-threatening, I'd say, you know what, let's give it a week, let's give it 2 weeks, let's just do a discovery call and just see. Because if the mind-body approach is for you and you are ready for it, you will know in your gut that you don't need that medication.
Yeah. And
you know, I feel a bit bad for the doctors, because I feel very, very bad for them, actually. They have 10 minutes per patient.
Yep.
And the patient, I was desperate, I was so desperate. They don't have long enough in 10 minutes to give me anything other than medication, physio, or surgery.
Yep.
That's what's on their menu of options. They can only look at what they can see and give you what they have got. They can't give you something they're not trained in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
agree with that completely. And I think sometimes doctors get such a bad rep, and actually, do you know what, like, they're not trained in everything. It's us as society that's given the authority because they wear a white coat, that we are supposed to believe everything they say. You know, they didn't do that for themselves necessarily, right? It's us that's projected that onto them. It's not then their fault if and when they prescribe in the way that they do, or the way they map health in certain ways. I remember meeting a doctor probably about 10 years ago now on one of my coaching qualifications, and it absolutely fascinated me that he told me he'd never had any training in nutrition whatsoever. And that boggled my mind. I honestly, I was like in absolute shock. Like I started mainly in kind of like the health and the fitness space. So like nutrition was always a part of the conversation. It was particularly lifestyle nutrition rather than clinical nutrition. But it was like, how can I know more about nutrition than a doctor? Like for me, like that was one of the things that just flipped the way I think about the health system. Right, because it was it was just an eye-opener, I think, because this the same goes for a mind-body approach. You know, great doctors out there will go and they'll upskill as much as they possibly can, of course, but we can't put all of the onus on them or on the practitioner or on the coach. Like it's absolutely crucial that everybody does their own research when it comes to their own life experience and their own human self, right?
Yeah, but you know, I've reflected so many times on all of those years that I was going. I had this little shiny Cigna medical card. I didn't have to pay a single penny. I just kept going. They'd give me whatever they want, as often as I want, you know. And I'm smart, you know. It's not like I'm not self-aware. I was in a senior role. Why, in all of those years, did I never question the doctor? I never thought to say to the doctor, do you think this could be something other than physical? I never said those words. And I never went to Google to ask anything other, because I was searching for things like back pain, and I was L5S1, you know, and obviously Google's given me more of what I've already searched for. So all I was seeing is horror stories. And now I wasn't really part of these Facebook groups at the time, but now when we have chronic pain, what do? We find a Facebook group that specializes in that. So then you're in a community where you feel safe, because there's, for example, fibromyalgia. You're in a fibromyalgia Facebook group. Finally, these people understand you. But the big belief with that is there's no cure for fibromyalgia. Well, okay, that within that Facebook group, maybe there's not.
Yeah.
But if you can get yourself out of that Facebook group and onto a different path, there is a way to recover from things like fibromyalgia. And there is a way to do all these, back pain and everything. It's just, we only see what we already see. And I was so annoyed with myself for not knowing about this. And then my anger turned to the medical system. And then finally, I forgave everybody, including myself, because I didn't know, and I needed to go on that journey. So.
And I'm so glad that you did, because it is so important to have that level of self-awareness. You know, the shoulda, woulda, couldas would be wonderful, wouldn't they? And hindsight's a wonderful thing, but we don't know what we don't know. And that's where we have to be compassionate with ourselves, to be like, I knew that was my current best thinking. Right, we have to look at, you know, the way we were raised. You know, these things weren't as accessible as perhaps what they are today, and vice versa. I think the good news is conversations like this raise that level of awareness. We're not saying this is the way, we're saying this is an option, right? And actually, if this is something that resonates with you and you can really feel that resonance within, then pursue it, and pursue it wholeheartedly. You know, because the only way we're going to start to know what we don't know is by asking questions and being curious and listening and just being open. And I know that's easier said than done. I mean, the good news is anybody listening to this podcast has already got a bit of a growth mindset. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening to this podcast, in my view. Anyway, I might be wrong. Maybe there's people with a fixed mindset that just listen to this going, no, I hope not.
I wish I had listened to this podcast in 2010.
And this is exactly why we have these calls, and you know, and have, like, you come on the show, and why you do interviews on other shows, is because, like, it's such a necessary message. And if we continue to rely on other people to do it, again, where are we placing our own sense of power, right? Like, what are we doing with that? You know, it's it's one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast, and why we created the Wellness Theory in the first place. You know, we created it, the Wellness Theory, because we needed this information, we needed these services, we needed exposure to this stuff, and we didn't have it. And that's really why we do what we do today. And I think that's why a lot of people do what they do. And this is why I love what you do, Gemma, is because it's coming from such a place of integrity, and it's just so authentic and genuine that you just know the results that you get with your clients are pure, you know. So the fourth P, practical tools, what everybody's been listening and waiting for. You've already given some activities that people can do around the somatic tracking and evidence tracking. What else? What comes under your practical tools?
I would recommend a book. If I might, can I do that on your podcast?
Yeah,
it's fine. So the number one book, I mean, books change all the time, but the one that I recommend because it's the easiest to read is called The Way Out by Alan Gordon. This is very easy. You read it in a few days, and you know what? By the end of that book, you'll be like, yes or no. This is for me. This is not for me. And it's a funny book. The guy's, yeah, it's really, really good. So that's definitely a resource I would recommend. Practical tools, I would say journaling, which not like teenage journaling, like it's a very specific way. You grab a piece of paper, you know, you're not feeling great, you've got a migraine, whatever, and you don't even have to have any physical thing going on, you're just not feeling great. Start writing on the top of a piece of paper, I feel, and then whatever you feel, I feel annoyed with my boss, I feel angry about this, and try and use the emotion words if possible. And when you get to the end of line 1, write over the top of line 1. So you're effectively double writing. So nobody can read your writing, including you. By the end, it will just look like scribble. And then keep going and keep going and keep going. Set a timer, 15 minutes or whatever, and just keep writing. And if nothing comes up, just write blah, 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 blah. And eventually another thing will come. And you will be surprised what comes out. Now, get mean, get angry, say all the things you would never say out loud because it's so wrong to say it, and just get it out on the paper, because once we've processed out, it's like all this emotion is trapped inside it. It is one way of getting it out. It's not for everyone, but it is free and it is easy, relatively easy, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. I still use this from time to time now, just to decompress from a busy day. And just to give you an example, you're not allowed to be angry with your children or your partner or your family or your sister or your brother. You know, you're not allowed to be angry with these people, because that's not right, because you are family and you're supposed to love each other so much unconditionally forever and ever. That's when journaling is helpful, because you can say exactly what you really think. Like, my kids are being so annoying. I wish they would just, and just get it out. It doesn't make you a bad mom, you know, or a bad partner. It's true what you're saying, but it's partly your subconscious just needs to get it out. So journaling is a really, really big one.
My face lights up every single time anyone comes on the show and talks about journaling, because if any of our clients in particular are listening to this, which I'm sure they are, that they know that I'm a massive journal nut. I absolutely love it. John would be poking me in the ribs right now if he was sat next to me hosting this episode as well. He's like, I've got all my journals like stacked up everywhere. But one of the things I absolutely love about what you said there is the writing over the first line. I've not done that before. I'm going to do that. I'm curious to see how that goes. And it's going to mess with my like nice, neat OCD part of my brain, I think. But
exactly,
good. I need to lean into that, right?
Yeah, because the reason I suggest it is if there's a chance that as you're writing, somebody could be looking over your shoulder, or there's a chance that you might forget to throw this piece of paper away, or there's whatever, you could have a heart attack halfway through journaling and you've written all these nasty things about your whatever. Like, your subconscious is not going to let rip. It's going to still be a little bit cagey. I've got to keep all my beautiful books on the shelf. I mean, the best piece of paper to do journaling on is a scrap of paper that you're not going to keep, that you double write all over. Sometimes I triple or quadruple write on a piece of paper to the point where there's almost a hole in the piece of paper, and then I throw it away because it's symbolic. When you push it away from you and put it in the dustbin, it's gone. It's not with you anymore. It's gone.
I love that. I have like, so I think I'm going to reveal a lot about myself now, I think, is like I have like my deep insightful journals and then I've got like my educational journals and then I've got like, my trash journals, which are those ones, which are the ones where it's just like scribbles and I can go in the bin, I'll burn it or whatever. I'll probably overdo it on the journal front, but it organizes my mind. It's useful. So yes, that is one option, and definitely a powerful option for you. I feel was about to share another practical tool with us.
I am. So you mentioned meditation was a game changer for you. I struggled with meditation so badly. Like, I could not sit for 3 minutes without getting angry. I literally was getting angry that I couldn't do it. My mind was so busy, and I know all the literature is like, the more you do it, the better you get, the longer you can sit there. But the anger that it was causing me was making me feel like bad, and then making the pain worse and the stress worse. So then I discovered this thing called Yoga Nidra. I'm not sure you're familiar with it.
That's the very first meditation that I started to do, and it was, again, an absolute game changer. It was I think that's what really started to unlock my ability to associate with my emotions. Just that one practice. I'm convinced that was the beginning of it all.
I totally agree. So for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what Yoga Nidra is, because I never used to know what it was until I accidentally stumbled upon it. It's a meditation that you listen to. You can find it on Insight Timer or YouTube. There's loads of free ones. And you lie down in a dark room, and the idea is you do not fall to sleep. You listen to the words that the person says, and you do what they say. And the science behind it's quite clever, because your brain can only do two things at once. So you're concentrating, and then you're doing what the person says. So the person's saying, like, focus on your little finger, and focus on your ring finger, and now focus on this finger. And so as she's saying it, you're like trying to focus on what she's saying, and you're so busy doing that. Eventually, I don't know if it's the magicalness in their voices or whatever, but eventually you go into this place where your body is completely relaxed, but your mind is still awake.
Yep.
And so what this teaches your body is that you can fully surrender, and your nervous system can be safe because your mind is awake. And so when you do this in the daytime, let's say I usually, if I've had like a really busy day, I'll try to do it 15 minutes before the kids come in from school, so that I can reset, and then I'm the best I can be for them. But then I always sleep better at night, because I've reset my nervous system in the day. So my body now knows it's safe to relax. You did it already today. Yeah. But I didn't sleep in the afternoon at all. Yeah. So I still sleep in the evening. Sometimes when you're new with it, you do fall to sleep, which is fine. But it was a game changer. And then I realized it's easier to learn to relax the body first, and then later learn to relax the mind with traditional meditation and stuff. And now, just for the record, I'm a bit better at the meditation. I can do 15 minutes now.
Amazing, congrats, that's awesome, that's great progress. With the Yoga Nidra, one of the reasons why it helps us to relax so deeply is because it gets our brain literally into the theta and delta brainwave states, which are very similar obviously to the ones that we go into when we're asleep, and that's where healing happens. When we do about 40 minutes of a Yoga Nidra, it's the equivalent of around 3 to 4 hours of sleep as well. So it's a massive like energy plus as well. I can't do it in the evening. If I do it in the evening, I won't sleep at night. So I have to do it in the morning. Otherwise, I've just got so much energy after doing it most of the time that this sleep is like, I'll be really resourceful now. I can go and work, or I can do this thing or whatever. So it's not ideal. So anybody that wants to try that, we have our own free recording of that that we can send you. So just drop us an email at info@thewellnesstheory.com, and we'll make sure that you get that. It's in it as part of our Zen Zone, but we'll give you that one just because it's been mentioned on today's podcast. But it's game changer. And like you said, like for anybody that's like got a bit of a love-hate relationship with meditation, yeah, give it a try. It's a nice place to begin. Yeah.
Do you know, there's so many different things, the practical tips. Exercise, obviously everybody says exercise, but from a chronic pain point of view, if you're deliberately not doing an exercise, a physical exercise, let's say swimming, because you can't because your neck hurts, or you're not running because your knee hurts, the longer you don't do that exercise for, the stronger the neural pathway for the pain. Because by not swimming, you're sending a message to your brain that there is something wrong with you, and then it gets worse and worse. So the very, very first interview I ever did on chronic pain, where I shared my story, was with SIRPA in the UK. I was trained with SIRPA. They're the chronic pain body in the UK. A lady listened to the episode, and she contacted me afterwards, and she went, I haven't swam for years, and I've just been swimming, and I can't believe it. I did it. And like, so that's all you have to do. Just do it. Just start.
So I have a exercise. There's one exercise which is kettlebell swings. Yeah, and so you got me wondering now. I don't have chronic pain in my back anymore. I did, and then throughout my journey, I realized it was closely linked to grief, from an emotion standpoint. But whenever I've done that exercise, I've always then been out for like a week after, and it's definitely not a technique thing. I've had so many like experts watch me, even when I trained as a kettlebell instructor, like one of the best instructors ever, most experienced guy that learned in Russia, and is like, there's no physical reason why you should be feeling your pain right now. So and it's still something that I've shied away from even today. So you've inspired me. Maybe I'll have a little dabble with the kettlebells again.
Yeah, but it's not like a little dabble. It's a like, believe you can do it. Put the kettlebells in a place where you will see them, or like your trainers or whatever, and then make a point of like, I'm going to do this no matter what it feels like for the next 5 days, or I'm going to do it once a week, every week for the next month or year or whatever. It's called outcome independence. So I'm going to do this activity regardless of how I feel for 3 minutes. And then no matter how you feel, you commit to sticking to that 3 minutes. That's outcome independence. And when we're not connected to the outcome, it breaks the pain fear cycle. And you can then gradually build up the number of minutes or the reps or whatever.
Yeah, I won't be starting off with 3 minutes of kettlebell swings. Thank you very much. Not unless I want to really baby weight. We'll see. But I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted on how that one goes. Great tip. Yeah, nice one. Amazing. Are there any other practical tools or any other words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, there's too many practical tools that I could possibly share. And when I do corporate workshops, the first thing I start with is, this isn't a workshop where I'm going to give you all the practical tools, because if you just go to ChatGPT and type in, I typed in once, give me 10,000 ways to reduce stress. And it said, whilst I can't give you 10,000, I can give you 1,000. So you could go there and look down the list and think, which ones of these will work for me, which ones will not. There's so many obvious things. Getting daylight into your eyes first thing in the morning to reset your nervous system, your circadian rhythm. For chronic pain, one of the key things is sleep is usually affected for most of my clients. And then they panic, I've not slept all night. And then the next day, their pain is worse. It's worse because their nervous system's in fight or flight because they've not slept. But you don't need to worry about not sleeping, because in 10 o'clock in the morning, you put yoga nidra on.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
And you supercharge yourself and you carry on. So it's getting rid of the fear. And yeah.
Just the sleep, yes, is deeply restful and recovering, but there's other ways to rest and recover as well. So if sleep is an issue, like, it's such a good hack, for want of a better term, but for really getting the most out of rest and recovery. One thing I'm absolutely loving about the whole like well-being space right now is the fact that there's a lot more emphasis on recovery and the yin to the yang than what there used to be. So I'm really excited to see like how the landscape changes over the next year or so, and how easily it's then adopted by perhaps listeners to this podcast and to people that are genuinely not just trying to be healthier, but they're trying to relieve suffering. I think like there's so much in it with recovery for sure. Good point.
And I think words of wisdom, I don't know if I'm a good words of wisdom person, but I would say that for anyone that's listening that's got chronic pain, I would reframe the whole thing and start seeing this as, this is going to be a midlife reboot, and that's the like the thing that's going to lead you to become like the best version of yourself. Because if I look at who I was before I had chronic pain versus who I am now, I am 10 times, like 20 times a better person in every single area of my life. I'm happier. I didn't realize I wasn't happy. I didn't realize I was stressed. I didn't realize any of these things. But now when I look back, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I could have actually carried on my entire life as that old version of me, and it's not what I want. And the other thing, which we haven't touched on, but I am going to mention briefly, is there's certain personality types that are far more susceptible to chronic pain. And I know, because we've talked about your listeners, one of the personality types is high achievers. High achievers, type A personality, people who are overly conscientious, really responsible, people who you know, have a really high empathy and they're thinking of other people before themselves, people pleasers, perfectionists. So if you take any of those and you've got chronic pain, that's even more evidence that this is something that this is an approach that really could work and really change your life, not just get rid of the pain, but like supercharge everything else.
Yeah, perfect. And that is basically our listeners, what you just described as well. High risk of chronic pain and burnout. So it's more important now than ever, because not only do we have this internal stuff that's going on, life's pace is getting faster, there's more stimulus, there's less time for processing. Obviously that's very generalized, but you know, we're all feeling it, I think, on some level, this sense of urgency. And unless we take a grip now, we'll end up being consumed by it. And right now we're at a choice point, and the power is in every individual's hands, as much as now than what it'll ever be. So if not now, then when, is my question.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm so excited about the future, like, because I know being old does not equal pain. I know that. And I used to think that being old equaled pain. And now all I can see ahead of me is like Ironman competitions, and like I've got all these goals of things I want to do that involve physical things. So yeah,
exactly. One of Jonathan's goals is to get younger every year, like fitness wise, just like longevity wise, like health wise. And last year I did a big kayaking challenge, did it just for myself, around 3 islands in Thailand. So it's 150 kilometers. It was an amazing experience, and everybody, since I did that, everybody said, are you going to do it again? And most people expect no, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it again. They're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So when I'm 70. So I did it when I was 35. So now, like, my thing is that when I'm 70, I want to do the 3 islands again, but I want to beat my time when I'm 70. Yeah, so it's like, okay, we're just like stretching the norm of like what's been. You know, I remember my grandparents, you know, they were not in good health by the time they passed on. And I understand, you know, there is a level of deterioration or whatever as we age. It was still questionable. And I can see, you know, mine and Jonathan's parents, like their state of well-being and state of health, and how some of the family members are going one way and some are going the other way. And it's like we're at a choice point. It's like, who do we model moving forward? What choices are we going to make? You know, are we taking advice about our lifestyle from people that are living the lifestyle that we want or not? Are we dropping our standards to fit in and things like that? And I mention that because that's something that I know collectively everybody experiences on some level, you know. And it's these things that come back to that identity piece that we spoke about earlier, I think, because when we really know who we are, it's so much easier to make those decisions. And because to listeners that might be stressed and in chronic pain right now or burning out, listening to something like this can be actually really infuriating, because it's like, well, it sounds easy for you. You know, and people have said that, but reality is, like, it wasn't easy for me, it wasn't easy for you, it wasn't easy for Jonathan, but you got no regrets in doing it, I bet.
No, I'm so grateful that I'm so grateful I had the back pain. And it's an absolutely ridiculous thing to say, because I suffered for a long time with it. And I had a lot of time off work with the physio and this, that, and the other. I spent a fortune on different medical things. This chair, I bought the most expensive office chair of all time because I thought I needed it. It's ridiculous. But I don't regret it at all. Like the having gone through the journey, the amount I've learned. And I think just reflecting on the thing about as you get old, your body deteriorates. Yeah, it does deteriorate, but pain comes from the brain, not from a deteriorating body. So like if you were to look at an MRI scan of a newborn baby, I'm sure the spine would be perfect, possibly. But statistically, as you get, from all the research, as you get older and older and older, you see more and more damage on the MRI scan. It does not mean that's where the pain comes from. In fact, it would be abnormal to see a normal MRI scan. So if a doctor shows you an MRI scan and says, well, that's where your pain's coming from, no, that's not where the pain's coming from. That's some abnormal thing on the scan, which is actually normal, and the pain is coming from the brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, definitely. 100%. Gemma, I feel like we could go on and on and on and on and on today. Is there one thing, we've already talked about so much, is there one thing that you wish you knew at the very beginning of your chronic pain journey that you wish you'd known?
Yes, there is, but I don't think I would have heard it. I wouldn't have wanted to have heard. I wasn't ready to hear it because going down the medical route was all I knew, and it's all that made sense. But I feel like if I'd have heard a podcast like this or read a book like this at that time, the pain wasn't bad enough for me to take action. I would have continued to see a physio, but I would have always remembered about the podcast or the book. And when it got bad enough, I would have gone, you know what, that's it. I'm going to go back to that book and I'm going to read it now. So yes, I wish I had that. And the other thing is, I don't know if it's okay to say this now, but I have an assessment that I do for free. It's on my website where people answer questions of like, does your pain come and go? Does this happen? Does that happen? And there's questions about the pain. There's questions about, did this happen to you in your childhood? There's questions about your personality type. Do you have any of these personality types? And then there's no pass score. But by the end, you'll be able to go, oh, yeah, actually, I'm blown away by the fact that how many boxes I ticked, and actually this could help me. And I think I wish that I'd had something as black and white as that at the beginning to help me to decide this path or this path.
Yeah, nice, perfect. Well, we'll definitely make sure the link to that is in the show notes, but I believe it's on your website. What is that website?
Yeah, it is. It's just my name, GemmaMcFall.com.
Perfect, amazing. Yeah. We'll make sure that obviously that link and link to your social media and all that jazz is in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your insights, your wisdom, and your expertise.
Thank you so much for the conversation and for listening, and for all the listeners listening, and for, I guess, for anyone listening that has that open mind to the point where they're willing to unlearn and relearn something completely new. It's amazing. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
Then share it with a friend who you think might benefit.
Spread the word. That's how we're going to impact the world, by helping each other.
We appreciate you so much, and as always, unconditional love and wellness to you.